All right, folks, grab your coffee, your tea, or maybe something a little stronger, because today's episode of Daily Gossip is going to be a heavy one. We need to talk about what is happening across the pond in the United States. We usually keep things light, focusing on the latest celebrity flubs or royal family drama. But sometimes the real gossip, the most scandalous, jaw-dropping tea, is brewing right inside the Oval Office. Now let an oppose say it plainly, and I'm borrowing a quote straight from Rolling Stone magazine here. There has never been a president as corrupt as Donald Trump. There is no close second in their history. I know, American politics has always been a bit of a reality show, and flouting ethical rules is hardly a new phenomenon in the presidency. We've seen some leaders who were more exemplary than others. However, most historians agree that the behavior of chief executives has grown noticeably worse since the early 1970s and the heyday of Richard Nixon. But what we are witnessing right now pushes the limits of anything we've ever seen. Let and oppose dive into why more and more critics, ethical watchdogs, and even politicians within his own Republican Party are labeling this the most corrupt presidency ever. Objectively speaking, the perception, which is increasingly backed up by actual documented acts, is that Donald Trump is treating the presidency like his own personal ATM. He is allegedly using the highest office in the land to line his own pockets, enrich his family members, and offer all sorts of governmental favors in exchange for cash. We are talking about pardons, policy decisions, and government appointments being doled out to the highest bidder. If you have enough money to pay for the privilege, it seems you can get just about anything from this administration. Don and oppose, just take my word for it. The American Bar Association, America and Oppo's premier attorney membership organization, recently stated that more than any other president in recent history, Trump caters almost exclusively to the wealthiest and most powerful, the billionaires, the CEOs of major corporations, and the extremely well-heeled. It is blatant self-dealing on a massive scale. It is creating a pay-to-play culture in American politics that is entirely unprecedented in its scope. Yes, they had Nixon and Watergate, but the sheer brazenness of what is happening now is on another level entirely. What truly makes this unprecedented ISN and oppose just the acts themselves, but the fact that the president is engaging in these blatant ethical breaches openly. He's almost flaunting it. And strangely, this strategy seems to be working on a large portion of the American public. They have become numb to it, because he doesn't and oppose try to hide his actions. There's an implicit assumption among his supporters that if he's doing it out in the open, it must be okay. But it's not okay, and to illustrate just how bad things have gotten, let's look at a recent development that is raising eyebrows around the globe. The so-called, in quote, anti-weaponization fund, end quote. I put that in quotes because that's the term the Trump administration uses, but critics have a much more accurate term for it, a slush fund. Here is the backstory. Earlier this month, Donald Trump created this fund as part of a settlement in a lawsuit he brought against his own government. He sued the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, for $10 billion, alleging they leaked information about his tax returns. Then, his own acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, preemptively dropped the government and oppose's defense and said, end quote, let and oppose settle, end quote. The terms of this settlement? The Justice Department uses taxpayer dollars to create this fund, symbolically set at $1.776 billion. Get it? 1776, the year of U.S. independence. It is a staggering amount of money, pulled directly from the public purse, and tied up in a number seemingly designed to mock the very concept of democratic governance. This is where it gets incredibly tricky, so try to follow me. The stated purpose of this fund is to compensate people who claim they were targeted by the Biden Justice Department and Democrats. Critics argue that this is essentially funneling taxpayer money directly to President Trump and oppose's political allies. It's a mechanism for rewarding loyalty and punishing perceived enemies, utilizing federal funds to settle personal and political scores. Perhaps most horrifically for the growing number of critics, this money could potentially go to the January 6th rioters, the individuals who violently ransacked the U.S. Capitol building and attacked police officers. Under this new logic, they could receive taxpayer compensation because they are perceived by this administration as politically persecuted individuals. It is a brazen misuse of the Justice Department to do Trump and oppose's political bidding, effectively weaponizing the very department meant to uphold the law. Even some Republicans are disturbed by this blatant overreach, and Capitol Police officers, who were on the front lines defending the seat of government, have already filed lawsuits against the creation of this fund. As if that wasn't an enough to make your head spin, this slush fund controversy is playing out alongside another massive developing scandal, a stock trading controversy that reeks of insider dealing. A new ethics disclosure report to the U.S. Office of Government Ethics reveals that Donald Trump engaged in an astounding 3,600 stock transactions between January and the end of March of this year. That is about 60 trades a day. Now you might say, and quote, "So what? Presidents are allowed to trade stocks?" End quote. And you would be right. They aren't banned from playing the market, but they are subject to strict personal disclosure rules. The issue here isn't the trading itself, but the nature and timing of these transactions. Trump claims these are not personal trades and are managed by a third party, but almost all of them involve big tech and big AI companies, names like Intel, Palantir, and Microsoft. The timing is highly suspicious. According to estimates based on this ethics report, Donald Trump has made massive gains, up to $750 million, because these stocks were bought just before major announcements made by his administration. For instance, consider the decision to let NVIDIA, one of the world's leading chipmakers, sell its advanced AI chips to China, a major policy decision by the Trump administration. Lo and behold, just before that announcement, a massive NVIDIA trade was executed. This an isolated incident, a recurring pattern, a series of suspiciously timed transactions that critics argue desperately need to be investigated. You have to wonder, with all of this going on, how is the American public reacting? Why aren't people taking to the streets? In Congress, there is some pushback. There are bipartisan efforts, meaning both Republicans and Democrats are involved, sponsoring bills like the Restore Trust in Congress Act. End quote. This aims to ban public and congressional officials from engaging in the types of stock transactions we've just discussed. Some lawmakers are pushing for the president and vice president to be included in this ban, though that remains a point of contention. But what about the ordinary American? Rolling Stone pointed out the bitter irony. Donald Trump is enriching himself by billions of dollars, while ordinary Americans are struggling to make ends meet. Yet, there is no mass outrage. The man who ran as a champion of the ordinary American against, corrupt elites, is allegedly engaging in corruption on an unimaginable scale. The answer goes back to that normalization of corruption we discussed earlier. He has moved the needle so far that people expect this behavior from him. The reaction is often just a shrug and "Oh, come on, Trump being Trump. He and still our champion?" End quote. There is a profound disconnect between the legal experts, ethical watchdogs, and politicians who see this as a horrific historical anomaly, and a public that seems largely apathetic. While some voters have turned against him, he remains wildly popular in deeply conservative states. Many are willing to turn a blind eye, or they fall back on a cynical worldview. End quote. All politicians are corrupt. The Democrats are just as bad. They all do it to line their own pockets. End quote. This, both-sidesism, is a dangerous false equivalency. Based on what we are seeing, the slush funds, the suspicious stock trades, the blatant self-dealing, there is a very strong case to be made that Donald Trump is presiding over an administration that has engaged in more corrupt acts than any other in U.S. history, dating all the way back to the founding of the nation. We will keep following this story, folks, because it's far from over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the darker side of political gossip, please make sure to subscribe to the Daily Gossip channel. Your support helps us bring you more in-depth coverage and the latest tea from around the world. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below letting me know what you think about this whole situation. Until next time, stay curious.